Hello everyone, welcome to the When the Boat Comes In podcast. We're now speaking about the episode after the bonfire. This is the aftermath of the Duke of Bedlington's dinner party, isn't it? Where Jack Ford got many fitters' jobs for the union, but Dolly ran away, his wife. She couldn't take this joke. Well, not a joke, but not a very nice thing was said to her at the dinner party by one of the biddies in the drawing room, as Jack puts it, and she ran away into the arms of Tom Seaton, and Tom did the catch-in, as Jack says. And it's very tough on Jack, isn't it? Because really, one of his best mates has betrayed him, really. But at the same time, he doesn't really seem that bothered about losing Dolly, if you're honest about it. If you watch this episode, there's an example where he gets drunk, and actually Matt says to him, "You don't sound sad, you sound happy. You sound like you're celebrating." He kind of puts it that way. So I don't think Jack is that bothered that he has to get rid of Dolly. He's moving on to bigger and better things. And Dolly even says in one of the episodes that with Jack, he was someone she got lumbered with. I think it is in this episode. She says that to her brother Matt, and it's funny how Matt's really kind of worried about his friendship with Jack. They've been friends since the war, and now they work together at the Fitters Union. Matt's Jack's assistant, so he's worried how this will affect their friendship. But of course. It doesn't affect it at all, does it?
Lost prospects in London, chance of a lifetime, but he'd given his word. He stood by. Then he started again from the bottom.
From prison.
All right then, from prison. But look where he is now. He took us both with him.
He took you, Matt. I'm just something he got landed with.
Dolly, I know he's got his faults. We all have. But he's a good man. A generous man. He'll give you his last penny.
I want nothing from him. He hates me.
Hate? You're talking like the pictures.
I am not, man. He does.
Well, I've never seen it.
You're not with him all the time, are you? He wants rid of us.
Don't talk daft. You're his wife.
His wife, aye. But you're the one that fetched us back.
In the war.
God, Matt, not that bloody war again.
Listen, will ya? When I first joined, I knew nought. And drunk my rough on the knot. Never out of trouble. Till Jack took us in hand. He's my corporal then. Sorted us out. Looked after us. If it hadn't been for Jack, I would have been dead. That's the kind of man he is, a pal. A real pal.
Well, maybe you're the one that should have married him then.
Brotherly love, Matt.
When Jack returns from the party, you see the opal that he gave Dolly, and she wasn't happy about this. And this all stems, and I do kind of understand it, because with women, buying your own ring and all that, it's very important, isn't it? If it was meant to be for somebody else, I do kind of get that. But with this opal, it did belong to somebody else. But it's beautiful, isn't it? Obviously, because Lady Caroline wants it. She must understand what a lovely thing it is. But to Dolly, it's just another example of the ring. Because, of course, Jack didn't buy Dolly's own wedding ring. He bought it, of course, for Jessie Seaton. That never happened. That's why it was slack when he bought it. And she'd have to get it resized, rather. But yeah, she sees this opal as another example of Jack, not looking after her. Yeah, she does in a strange way. But of course, Lady Caroline wants it, and this is all to do with the Manners deal to get Mandrake House. Well, originally, Manners wants Jack to get the land for Manners from Lady Caroline. But at this point, we don't realise that Lady Caroline has the land. To begin with, I think Manners thought it was the Duke of Bedlington's. And then Jack, of course, finds out that where Mandrake House is, the land there is owned by Lady Caroline. She takes a shine to the opal. So it's kind of part of the deal that she gets the opal as well as Jack giving her a better offer on the land.
I thought your wife looked very pretty at Daddy's little dinner.
She did.
An enchanting dress, which I'm quite sure you chose. And a quite mouth-watering opal. Rather a mistake to call yourself the Opal Land Corporation, wasn't it?
Ah, it was. What are you going to do?
Sell, why not? Horry will be furious.
Aye, he will.
You're not scared of him.
Terrified.
That's funny. He said he felt the same about you.
Well, that's all right then.
I also really like the part where Jack has too much to drink and he wants to go up the stairs, but he's finding this a bit of an obstacle, isn't he, because he's had a few. And it's really funny. Well, I think it's great. I think it's a great example of Jack Ford. He falls down the stairs, and of course Matt wants to help him. But Jack says, "I'll manage. I always have, and I always will." And that is Jack Ford. He'll manage.
I said I'll manage. I always have, and I always will.
Of course, Tom meets Dolly late at night, and I think it's funny the way back then things had to be decided very quickly, didn't they? Of course, she's a married woman, so this is why. But yeah, everything has to be decided quickly that Jack wants to be with Tom. I think Dolly says to Tom, "You're not playing with us, are you?" Because obviously she's in a tough spot now because, well, it's of her own making, though, isn't it? It's of they've both done it, so it's their own fault. But Jack's so nice about this, really. Not to begin with, not in this episode. What he does at the end of this episode, I think it's brilliant. It's one of my favourite endings. But after this episode, Jack is nice about it. He didn't have to be like this. He sort of arranges for him to be seen with a chorus girl, I believe, like a weekend at a holiday place by the seaside, so that Dolly's has an alibi that Jack was cheating on her. Otherwise, back then, if you were a woman and it was the other way around, it was terrible. Yeah, it was really bad. So in that respect, Jack was really good to Dolly and Tom. And it's funny when Tom comes over to see Matt and Jack. And with Tom, yeah, it's interesting. This is the first point where I don't really sympathise with what he's done, if I'm honest. All the other things he's done up to this point, I get. Like he had to become a scab, to help save his wife. That didn't work out. Becoming a thief. Yeah, it was similar, wasn't it? Sheep stealing, the same. But to betray his best friend or one of his good friends, yeah, it's not great, is it? But at the same time, Jack wasn't that bothered. He didn't put up much of a fight about losing Dolly. I think if he wanted to keep her, he could have, but he didn't really try. So maybe he did him a favour, to be honest. Yeah. And Tom's really happy about this. And it's funny, Bill doesn't have a problem, his father, with this at all, because he says the same thing, that she's not what Jack needs where he's going. He's going to go to the top. So, yeah, it's interesting. Of course, Bella finds out about Tom and Dolly, and she's the sharp one, isn't she? It's funny because he meets her late at night, and he says it's about a gardening job. I mean, I think from that moment she knew that it wasn't a gardening job, but then she looks out the window and she says, this chap's wearing a skirt. Yeah. Funny.
You couldn't see?
Not to be sure.
You get yourself a pair of glasses, ma'am.
For God's sake, woman!
Tom Seaton will tell your man the truth. Who were you out with?
Just a lass.
A lass with no name?
Not for you. Not yet.
You're doing something wrong, I know you are.
I don't think so. Now it's late, ma'am.
You just hold on a minute. Well, I'll go to bed.
I want to know what...
You heard what I said. Did you sell away off to bed?
I'll hit you.
Aye. You can still hit.
I'm sorry.
I'll live.
It's no use hitting grown men. I'll still go looking for trouble.
And the part I like is when Tom comes round to see Jack, and he says to him, I don't think you'll have many contracts left after they find out that you take care of the wife as well as the gardening. I thought that was very funny. I mean, in this episode, you see what was quoted before in previous episodes, I think from Jesse. He knows how to hurt, and he does in this episode to, spectacular effect.
So, she's left me for you, is that it?
That's right.
Can you keep her?
I'm in work.
Why, the gardening. Under the circumstances, I think you and me better cancel our contract, don't you? Come to think of it, there mightn't be all that many contracts still standing. Not when folks find out you take care of the wife as well as the garden.
Of course, Lady Caroline is behind this land deal, or rather Jack finds out she's the one to buy the land off of. She gets the opal for selling the land to Jack. And it's quite funny when she goes back to his house. And she's a shrewd one. She knows things. She doesn't fall for things. And when Jack gives his whole "I could have dined at the Savile" speech, and then he died. It's really funny the way Lady Caroline's like, you've said that before. You're very good at it. Yeah. So she doesn't fall for it for 1 second. But I think she appreciates it the same.
Horry Manner's son was a company commander. My company commander. Good captain, nice man. He copped it at the Somme, poor devil. Shell burst. I held him in my arms and he looked at me and he said, "What am I doing here, Sergeant?" I said I'd dine at the Savile. And then he died.
You really do that awfully well, don't you?
It's true.
I believe you, bonny lad. But you still do it awfully well.
I do, don't I?
And of course they do share a couple of kisses in this episode, I believe, or maybe one. And yeah, you're thinking maybe they can get together, but they are from very different worlds, aren't they? She's a lady, of course, and Jack's a self-made man. But of course, as she says, in her family, they find him interesting because they believe he would have been like one of their remote ancestors who was just starting to make money. So, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And I think the Duke of Bedington really likes Jack. I think Lady Caroline says that he's good for his health. Yeah, seeing him. So, yeah, I mean, they really work well together up to this point and a bit later. It's only in the third series when things get a bit heated. This involves another family member, doesn't it? We'll come on to that when it comes up. But at this point, they seem like a really good partnership, to be honest.
Good advice about the land, I thought. I should take it if I were you.
I intend to. Daddy, before you came, he told me that his wife had run away.
Good Lord. And he was being so helpful about my servant problem.
Yes, wasn't he?
Jesse tells Billy that he must pay his debts back to the family. Of course, the debt started when he became a doctor, because back then there were no grants or anything like that. Basically, the family funded his education to go to university to become a doctor, and now he's working for Dr. Stoker for free. So Jesse says, well, you can do both. Basically, you can work for Dr. Stoker and you can work for Jack at the Fitters Union. And it's good that he starts to pay back his debt, rather, to the family. It's hard for him because obviously he's not making tremendous money. He's making good money, but that's his own bed, isn't it? He's made it, basically. Yeah, it's good that he starts paying back his debt to the family, because they must have really struggled for years and years and years to put him through the education. But I don't like the way he sort of pays them really grudgingly. Like when he gets his money out to give it to Tom, he's like, he gives him one note to begin with, and then Tom's like, oh, come on, and then he gives him more. But he just does it in such a, you know, like a moth has come out of his wallet. It's kind of like that. It's like, yeah, so it's good he starts paying back his debts, but he's a bit stingy, isn't he, Billy? Yeah.
Work for money?
As long as it's needed.
Money for the clinic?
Well, of course.
None for Dad and Tom and me?
If I have to...
Have to? Of course you have to. It's a debt.
All right then, half for the family, half for the clinic.
None for Dr. Seaton?
There's nothing I need.
Then you're a very lucky man. It's nearly time for his feed. I'll tell Mum and Dad.
Jess, I was wondering...
Wondering what?
There's not many jobs open to us around here, even less since I joined the clinic.
Go on.
The Fitters Union. Jack Ford's still looking for a doctor for the compensation cases. Well, at least that's what I heard. I thought... Well, I just wondered if...
If I'd go and speak for you again... You've got a nerve.
Yes, I know I have. When you fight poverty and sickness the way I do, it's the first thing you need.
Jack visits the Seatons, and Bella is shocked, and so is Jessie, about Tom and Dolly running off together. Bill isn't that bothered, I don't think, to be honest. But yeah, it seems like Jack's doing Tom and Dolly a favour at this moment, because he's found jobs for them. He's found a job for Dolly as a parlour maid, and he's found a job for Tom as a gardener, because, as Jack said earlier, back then, if you was a fornicator, you wouldn't get jobs. It's a different age now, isn't it? I don't think that would happen now. That wouldn't affect your contract. But back then, it did. Take care of the missus as well as the garden. Yeah, and all that. I thought that was funny when Jack said that. But with this family meeting, I guess the big highlight is when Jessie says about Jack calling Tom Mara. And Jessie's like, I didn't like the way he called you Mara. Yeah, so she knows Jack inside out, and as she said in a previous episode, he knows how to hurt. So, yeah, I loved it, personally. I thought they deserved it. They really did.
Well, it's like this, Mara. There's a gardener's job at the castle if you wanted. Place for a parliamentary bailiffs. 3-room cottage thrown in. And the that'll be good for young Tommy and all. Do you want it?
Why, of course I want it, but
what, Mara?
I thought you'd come to knock me block off.
I didn't like the way he called you Mara.
But to be honest, when you watch it, do you feel sorry for Tom and Dolly? I don't. Not really, because they've made this mess. And it's great the way he stitches them up, to be honest. It always makes me laugh, particularly the ending. Yeah, of course. It doesn't last very long either. Because of Lady Caroline, she intervenes. If she didn't, maybe they would have remained in the same situation. Because basically, he gets a job for Dolly as a parlourmaid at another house that the Duke of Bedlington knows. And he also gets a job for Tom as a gardener, working for a head gardener at the Duke of Bedlington's place. But the only thing is, they're being kept apart physically, because a parlourmaid can't be with a man. So, yeah, he really stitches them up, but it's really funny, isn't it? I love the end scene where Jack's on his horse and he oversees Tom being given a rollicking by the chief gardener, and then he goes to the house and Dolly answers the door, and she's the parlour maid, and she's like, yes, sir. I thought that was brilliant. I think they deserved it, to be honest. Yeah, he didn't treat her bad, did he, Jack? He treated her good. I suppose there wasn't that romantic spark between them. He didn't want to be with her. He just liked being with her for other reasons, didn't he? Let's be honest. But, yeah, I did like what Jack did to Tom and Dolly. I think they deserved it.
Enough is enough.
Lady Caroline Summers and Mr. Ford to see Mr. Armstrong. I think you'll find we're expected. Well, girl?
Yes, sir. Of course, sir.